Today is a day, Easter Sunday, where in many churches over the years, this has happened. Someone from the front says, Christ is risen, and everyone else says, he is risen indeed. So I'm going to invite us to do that in just a moment, but just with a maybe North Bramley flavor, if you will. If you're so inclined, you can give a fist pump on the he is risen indeed. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. So good to have you here today. For those who don't know me, my name's Jamie Holtum. I love Easter weekend. Just love Easter weekend. Easter, in some ways, especially what we're doing today, celebrating Jesus' resurrection, it's a one big surprise in some ways is what it is. Surprises, as we know, are things that we don't expect, where we just didn't see it coming. And this has that sense to it as we celebrate this. For instance, last night, Leafs winning in overtime. That might have been a surprise for some of us. Absolutely. I have a confession that I knew it was going to overtime, and I actually went to bed. And I did because it was going to be an early morning, and to be honest, I didn't want to see them lose. And then so I was even more surprised, and I was so glad when I got up this morning and saw what had happened. When a husband brings flowers to his wife, and maybe that hasn't happened for a long time or even ever before, she's surprised. She didn't expect it, and usually follows it up with, what are you looking for? When a young person gets their license, that's a big deal. Our daughter Leah just recently got her G2, and we're grateful for that, and absolutely, way to go, Leah. Yeah. I mean, so if I came home one day and I said, Leah, here's the keys to the car, it's now yours, she would be very surprised, and it's not happening. But that's okay. We get the idea. So when you think about this Easter story, man, like this was the ultimate surprise. The resurrection of Jesus was the ultimate surprise. When they showed up at the tomb that morning, they did not expect that to be the case. The other piece is that Jesus was the one on whom their hopes lied. He was the Messiah, the Savior. He was coming, bringing a new kind of kingdom, trying to free them from the Roman Empire, a world that was very much like ours, very much in need. And so they laid their hopes on Jesus, and now he had been killed. Now he had died, and here they were. Their hopes, in some ways, were gone. It was a very bad place to be. It was a place of desperation. It was a place of brokenness and pain, if you will. Sometimes we find ourselves in a place of life where we experience that kind of brokenness and pain. And as we put that reality into the reality of this story, maybe part of what's going on there is we're in a place where we're ready for resurrection. Sometimes we have a bad day. Anybody here ever have a bad day? Like a really bad day? Yeah, I had one, Lauren's got both hands up. Some of us have really bad days. I had one this past week, and I won't go through all the gory details. You've had those kinds of days. It was just one of those days where things started okay, but then it just went off, you know what. And so I'm not very good at hiding how I feel, I guess. So I don't know how many people that afternoon said to me, "Are you okay?" And of course I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Right? But I wasn't. And then I went home before I had to come back to the church for something going on that evening. And when I went home, it got worse because then I got a parking ticket right in front of our house. Because I'd parked the wrong way as I slid at the end of the driveway so the boys could keep playing basketball. I'm only home for half an hour. I come out, and I got a $30 parking ticket. It's not about the $30. We'll survive. But the bad day, you know what I mean? It was just one of those days. Anyway, what happened that night? I had one of the most amazing nights here in this church of ministry that I've ever experienced in my life. God showed up in a powerful way, and I went home that night thinking that was just, felt so blessed and beautiful, and the way God can surprise us and redirect things and shift things and change things in ways that we didn't expect or even anticipate even being possible. That's the power of resurrection. On that first Easter Sunday, that's what they experienced, that's the kind of surprise that happened for them. There's a story in the Bible that gives us a glimpse of what kind of resurrection is possible even before we have this experience with Jesus on Easter Sunday. It's a story in John chapter 11. And Lazarus has passed away. Jesus is good friends with Lazarus and his sisters Martha and Mary. By the time Jesus shows up on the scene, the story tells us that Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And so when Jesus starts to come to where they are, Martha comes running out to meet him. Martha is a woman of action. She comes running out, and in some ways, she's not happy because everyone has seen and known what Jesus is doing, and so she comes out with literally comes at him with this question: Jesus, where were you? If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Maybe we've said that over time. Jesus, if you had been here, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again. Martha says, I know he will rise again. I know that there is a resurrection at the end of our days. You see, the Jewish believers, the Jewish faithful, they believed in resurrection, but it would happen at the end of time. And so for Jesus then to do what happens in this conversation, this is really significant. This is a different way of thinking about resurrection. Here's a very brief conversation from what I was just saying, where it goes in verse 25 to 27. Jesus says to her, no, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will actually never die. And then he says, do you believe this? Martha says, yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Friends, just two reflections on this very brief conversation. The first is not to miss that Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Not I will be the resurrection and the life. Not one day. He said, I am the resurrection of life. Here, now, something is happening. You see, sometimes the Christian life, people can think it's living a life where we do enough good that then we die, we finally go to this place called heaven. But the challenge with that is, that doesn't make much of this life, does it? And surely this life is more than just enduring life on this planet until we go to some better, and it's not to say that, I mean, Jesus has defeated death. There's this promise of eternity. That's a part of this day. But what Jesus was all about was something more than just that. He didn't come to take us to heaven. He actually came to bring heaven to earth. And so when he says, I am the resurrection and the life, it's not I will be, I am. Right now, today, you're going to experience this kind of life among you, which is very hopeful and powerful. The other piece is he says to Martha, do you believe? And there's a reality to all of this where at some point people need to make a decision, a choice. Faith is a choice. And we can say yes, and we can say no, and we can say maybe, and we can say maybe one day. These are all realities. God loves us all wherever we're at. But the truth is that faith is a choice. And so Jesus says, do you believe? Martha, it's interesting when you think about this story. Martha's just lost her brother, Lazarus. She's in the depths of pain, if you will. She's broken. And it's out of that pain that somehow God brings belief. You see, sometimes pain, brokenness, disbelief, skepticism even, sometimes that precedes belief. That's part of this resurrection reality. That's a part of this story. So if we're in a place like that, friends, and some of us we may be having a bad day, like I said earlier, or a bad season of our life. Or maybe some of us today we're saying, I feel like I just have had a bad life. Maybe, when in the context of this Easter story, maybe that's not the worst place to be in the world. But we're simply ready for resurrection. Because it happens. It happens. We've been so blessed around this place to meet a young woman named Holly who's here this morning. Holly has allowed me to share this story. It's just an incredible story just over the last few months. Holly's one of those people that it feels like she's been around our church for years and years and years, but it's just been since January. Holly came in and started taking this course called Alpha. If you haven't heard about Alpha, I would highly recommend it. It's an amazing program. You come in for 12 weeks on a Wednesday night and you get a free meal. You like a free meal? I guess it's just so nice to have a meal made for you. I'm telling you. You eat, you watch this really inspiring video about significant stuff, and you get a chance to talk about it in a small group. It's amazing with an openness to different thoughts and beliefs, and it's quite powerful. On the first night, Holly said to the group that she was in, she said to our group, she said, I just want everyone to know that I'm a skeptic. And we said, you still get a free dinner. Don't worry about it. It's okay. And we said, no, it's okay. This is a good place for you. This is where else are you going to get a chance to ask some questions and have some different opinions. And so absolutely, this is cool that you're here. So cool. Anyway, 2 weeks later, Holly came up to me and she said, she's a teacher, an elementary school teacher. And she said, something happened this week. A student came up to see me, and they're going through some very difficult times. And after they left, I was really just moved and feeling for them. And so I realized that I said a prayer for them. And so then she said, is it okay if skeptics pray? I said, absolutely. God hears all prayers. 2 weeks later, Holly realized that she was just praying more regularly. It was just sort of starting to happen over the course of her day and her life. And she had a conversation with some friends. That sometimes we just need an insight, a little switch on something that we've been thinking about. And for Holly, it was simply that she had a sense that the Holy Spirit had been active in her life, and she just hadn't been able to articulate it that way or see it that way. And so it was an opening for her. The next evening, a couple weeks later, Holly was part of our group, and she wanted to pray for somebody who she was concerned about that night. And so we said, that's great. Do you want to lead the prayer? And she said, I'd love to. And she started her prayer before she prayed for her friend, saying, Lord, I just want to say thank you for coming into my life over these last few months. And when she finished the prayer, we all started laughing because we said, I think you've moved from skeptic to a believer. Friends, we may be in a place where we're not sure. That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes simply naming those doubts and questions is the best place for God to bring healing that can start a journey, that could change the course of the rest of our life. That's called resurrection. Maybe we're just in a place where we're ready for resurrection. So, back to Easter story. What happened when Jesus was raised was he then showed up. He appeared to many different people over a period of time. And there was a pattern that happened every time. And the pattern was simply this, and it would probably be the same if it was you or I. Whenever Jesus appeared, they didn't believe at first because they didn't recognize him. And so a question for us might be, if this resurrection life is still part of what is happening in our world today, Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Where do we see resurrection happening around us? Where do we maybe not recognize it at first until we stop to think about it and be aware of it? Where is resurrection happening? Well, I can tell you it certainly was happening in a woman named Agnes this week, who as we approached Easter weekend, she was reflecting on a year ago. A year ago, she was heading into Easter weekend in the depths of a cancer journey where she really didn't think she'd see another Easter. And she was just so grateful for the healing that she's experienced over this year. And I got to tell you, one of the most amazing things about Agnes is that she had come to a point, and this is in the miraculous category, she had come to a point where whether she lived or whether she didn't, she knew she was going to be okay. I think that's what Jesus is saying when he says, if you believe in me, you will have life, even if you die. That's powerful stuff. There's a woman named Tracy Nichols. There was a video shown of Tracy's story just back a few weeks ago, and just sharing the story about how Tracy went from a really dark and difficult place to a place of new life. And after watching this video, I don't know if you ever watched a video of yourself, but it's kind of strange sometimes to see a video of yourself. So Tracy came up to me after the service and she said, okay, one, that was weird to see myself on the screen. Two, she said, catch this, she said, I didn't even recognize myself. That's how far she had seen it, even from her own eyes, that she had come. That's resurrection, God bringing life. A good friend of ours has experienced some mental health issues. We know how rampant and how serious this can be. And was in a really bad place several weeks ago. And after moving through some treatments and some care, he'd literally gotten back into life. And the first time I saw him back into life, if you will, I saw him and I said, oh my gosh, you look like a completely different guy. I'm just so grateful for that. And he said, so am I, with this big smile on his face. Friends, that's the kind of stuff that God is doing all the time. It's this resurrection life bubbling up within us. But it isn't just in us. It's sometimes, this resurrection life, sometimes it flows through us. You see, the Easter story wasn't just meant to be a good story for us to sit around and talk about years later. It's one that continues to happen. This resurrection life continues to happen through us. We become Jesus' resurrection, if you will, in the world today. There's a book by a guy named N.T. Wright called The Day the Revolution Began, and he really frames this whole Easter story in the sense of it needs to be in the context of a bigger story, which includes us. He says the full meaning can only be understood in relation to what was then to happen in the life and work of his followers. That's us. The transformed and transforming human lives they were to lead in the power of the Spirit were in themselves part of the meaning of this event, that event being cross and resurrection. That's this Spirit-filled living series that Bruce was talking about, what it looks like for his Spirit, Christ's Spirit, to live in us, and we become his hands and feet in the world. We participate and partner with God in what God is doing. When you live like that, and it can sometimes simply start by a prayer when you get out of bed or you leave the house, saying, hey, God, I'm available for your Spirit to come and live in me today, and let's see what might happen. It can be a very dangerous prayer, but a lot of fun and very exciting. These resurrection projects are happening all over the place, where God works through us. You see, Jesus didn't come to start a church. He came to start a movement to heal a broken world. And the church, when it's working right, is a part of that movement. And so when you're open to that, you start becoming part of all these resurrection projects. On Good Friday, a couple days ago, a number of us went out and served in the community after our Good Friday service. Some of us went over to Madison Street. If you know Brampton, Madison Street is where there was a tragic fire a few months ago. Very unfortunate circumstances. A young girl was left without her parents and her older sister. And so you can imagine how this impacted the whole street. So we went over to Madison Street on Friday. We just knocked on doors and we just simply said, hey, we know it's been a tough year for you guys with this fire and all. We just wanted to say, hey, we're thinking of you and how you doing? And it just led to these amazing conversations, incredible response. Someone who was with us, they said, hey, when we're doing this, it's incredible, this feeling I get. She said, I feel like this is what Jesus would do if he were here. And part of what we were there is to help plan a gathering this summer where we said, how would you feel if maybe we came this summer and we worked together with you here in the street to offer a street party, a neighborhood party, to help people get to know each other, but also to bring some love and life to a neighborhood that's had a really difficult year. Resurrection Project. People are in like crazy. The Journey Neighborhood Center in the Ardglen community. We have some friends from Ardglen. Journey worship is there weekly, but because it's Easter Sunday, they've joined us today, and some are here this morning. But man, that's been a place, a community where we've experienced resurrection, life coming, hope coming where there was despair, and we're just so blessed to be a part of it. Soul Cafe, how many people have heard about this idea of the Soul Cafe? Okay, so it's on the wall back there. Bruce mentioned it. That's a resurrection project, to be light and hope in our downtown core, where we believe we're being led and where we believe we need some light and life and hope. How about this one? Because sometimes, again, if this is us living into Jesus' resurrection and his life bubbling up in our world today, sometimes the things that we think about as God leads us haven't actually happened yet. But we get a little tap on the shoulder and you get a sense this is one that I maybe need to be a part of. Here's one, maybe. Some of us are thinking that it probably is. We live in a city here in Brampton, do we not? That has got to be one of the most diverse cities on our planet. Would you agree? It's a very diverse city that we live in. I think for the most part, but not completely, so we got to keep working on this. I think for the most part, we've come through racial issues, but not completely. Every once in a while you hear a comment and you might hear them like, whoa, that's not the word. Anyway, but what about this? It's more than just tolerating one another. To live in a city together like we need to. It's more than just tolerating each other. Somehow, it's getting to know each other in a way that we really can be a community together. And that's going to take a building of relationships and doing some things together in these diverse groupings that we have in our city. Some of us are feeling this is a resurrection project that we need to be about. There's lots of resurrection projects. The good news is none of us have to be involved in all of them, but hopefully, we're all involved in some of them. Let me close with this. This is a picture. This is a picture that was taken just outside of our house a couple of weeks ago. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think you'll remember, we seemed to have a long period of days that were dark and where it rained all day, and it just really did start to feel like heavy and bad. So on one of these particular days, I went for a run early in the morning. And I got to say, if you run or do these kinds of things, sometimes you don't feel like going. Actually, most times you don't feel like going. But then when you get back, you feel, oh, that was good. I'm glad I went. Yeah, this wasn't one of those days. I didn't feel good when I started. I didn't feel good when I ended. I just did it, and there I was. I got home, and it was a dark and day where I wasn't expecting this, but there was this flower popping out of the ground that I hadn't even seen, and I don't even think it was there the day before. It had just popped up, and it just struck me on that day of heaviness that here God is popping flowers out for us to see as we go about our life. What's really kind of funny is my wife Katrina, we're not really big gardeners, and so we fortunately have a neighbor, Dulcie, who is. So most of the things planted in our yard, Dulcie's planted, including this. And it struck me that I did nothing for this to happen. And yet here I was able to enjoy it and receive the grace and life that it offered me that morning. Friends, that's a part of what this resurrection life is all about. Sometimes we just got to sit back and relax and put a big smile on our face and say, praise God for what has happened, because God can do things that are beyond our own capacities. And this whole resurrection is a part of that. And our job simply is to be ready for resurrection.